We just finished recording episode 1 of the Soapbox Business Show with our first guest, Sho Rust. Sho is an award-winning senior designer, developer, and technologist based in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He runs a company called SHO.AI. And I mean, he's done work for some of the biggest companies in the world, Zach. Nike, Google, Samsung, the United Nations, for God's sake. And he's won over 50 awards, South by Southwest, the Webbies, the One Show, and Presidential Scholar, just many more. The conversation circled around a lot of what Sho's doing now with his AI-based branding systems company, as well as his background growing up in Japan, his time at Interlochen and Art Center. Interesting guy. I think he's a life hacker. I know he says it doesn't exist, but we learned so much. I mean, we learned about how to go through a book in 2 to 3 days. We learned about how I'm trying that too. How AI is just absolutely revolutionizing workflows for creatives and for businesses in general, and what the future looks like, because from Sho's estimation, this is the next disruptor along the way. Interesting conversation. I'm trying to figure out how to take that and make it practical for my business. I think there's a lot to parse through here. Zach, what were your takeaways from our convo with Sho?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very eye-opening conversation around how to use AI in the creative field. And, just trying to, wrap your head around how much time that could actually save you. I mean, I was just thinking about if you were able to harness the power of a tool like this, and let's say you have a team of 10 people, 20 people. I mean, look at how much time you just opened up for them to focus on strategy, to focus on everything other than the very fine details of, making things pixel perfect and being caught up in all of this minutia. Like this tool just opens up so much time and so much opportunity. I think it's awesome.
I think it creates an opportunity in an entirely new business model that's going to just make us very efficient and streamline a lot of processes. The way Sho sees it is that 90% of brands have similarities, and there's a 10% special DNA, a lot like human DNA, that is different. And if you can get that 10% squared away, the 90% can be streamlined through the use of tools like what he's developed.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this conversation. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Soapbox Business Show, and we hope you enjoy the ride. All right, welcome to the first episode of the Soapbox Business Show. I'm your host, Mario Busto, alongside
Zachary. Welcome.
All right, guys, we've been wanting to do this for a while. We've talked about it as a business owner. I own a production company called 1992 Films. We feel like it's business wisdom, the lessons you learn, it's very practical. It transcends industries. And honestly, we just think that you can learn a lot about the art of business through conversation. And that's why we wanted to start this. It's the heart of the show. And a couple of weeks ago, I'm part of a group called the Future Pro Group, which is run by a guy named Chris Do, who our guest is very familiar with.
Yeah,
and
shout out to Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he starts talking about AI and starts talking about it in a way that is not the typical approach that we usually hear in the media about AI. Usually it's kind of in a threatening tone about the tools and implications of AI. But our guest here, I'm going to bring him in now. He is an award-winning senior designer, a developer, and technologist based currently out of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He's worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, like Nike, Google, Samsung, Acura, Intel, many more that everybody else in the audience can just be like, wow, about. His work has won over 50 awards, including the FWA, South by Southwest, the One Show, Webby Awards, ADAA, and Presidential Scholar. So let me bring him in with that intro. Sho Rust, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this stuff.
Happy to have you.
Sho, I got to be honest, when I heard Chris's talk, I mean, my mind just started going crazy about the possibilities of how AI can just absolutely, just revolutionize my workflow and production. And like the way he was talking about it, he was inspired, just so you know, because just humble flex here, brag or whatever. Like you had Chris Do like revved up. I mean, even if you go on LinkedIn now, if you go on LinkedIn, almost every other post is a generative AI art piece right now. He's going in on AI. So I want to
I'm
give you
happy to hear that.
He had Mario revved up too. I mean, right
Yeah.
after that, he's blowing me up. You got to join the group.
Oh,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm telling Zach, like, hey, I just heard a call right now. Like, I want this guy to be our first guest on the show. We'll see what we can do. And so you're here. But I want to open the floor to you. We're gonna have this show kind of divided in 3 sections. Intro off now, and I want to kind of just set the stage of who you are, what kind of work you're doing now, and tell us a little bit about yourself. And then we'll get a little bit into the background, and we'll take the show from there. So, the floor is yours, Sho.
Yeah. So really excited to be on this first podcast with you guys. Essentially, I've been a designer for a long time, working at production companies, agencies, you name it, even the United Nations and stuff like that. So kind of span the gamut between small production company to corporate to even government. 4 years ago, you would have found me at BCG, their digital ventures division. So it was kind of like the skunkworks division of BCG. If you're familiar with BCG, they're like big time consultants,
Okay.
typically, trying to help companies just kind of refine their innovation process. But I worked for a very specific division of that called digital ventures, where we kind of launch these businesses left and right almost every 6 months. We would come up with the idea through an innovation phase. We would incubate that idea and we would take it to market. And that even meant like building out the offices and hiring individuals and different things like that. In the rare occurrences, BCG would even give the team some equity and stuff like that. So it's an interesting model.
That's sick. So that's
But
like an incubator, like a 6-month incubator for just crazy amount of startups, right?
Yeah. But the difference between BCG Digital Ventures and then a typical startup is that these are ventures or startups that have been partnered with big corporations. So they have an really unfair advantage in terms of resources, distribution channels, and different things like that. And we're helping them think more like a startup by essentially, it's an interesting dynamic, actually. You have 6 of us on our team, and you have 6 from the client's team, and we actually work together to come up with these ideas. So the client not only gets the benefit of the output that we get, they get the benefit of being kind of embedded in an innovation process. So they could kind of take that home with them. So it was really fun, but at the same time, I felt like I always wanted to be able to do more, so to speak.
Yeah.
I always felt like kind of overwhelmed by all the things that we had to do in such a short amount of time. You could probably kind of relate to this working at a production company.
Yeah.
It seems like the amount of customer expectations, continue to like triple every year.
Yeah.
And yet the tools don't seem to be catching up until now. 3 years ago, I started noticing like a big trend in automation. Basically, big tech companies, the Facebook, Shopify's, Google's of the world, are already taking advantage of this beautiful power of AI to kind of make sense of their data, right? So they're able to make really good decisions with less risk. And then this has become an interesting dynamic when it comes to like, okay, what does the future of entrepreneurship look like if the secret's out? If these corporations are kind of designed to squash you before you get to a scale where you're sustainable.
Especially if they have that mindset that you're talking about, like in BCG, where it's, it takes a long time to turn that ship as a huge corporation.
Yep.
But if they're coming in with like, all right, we need to think about how to disrupt ourselves and be a part of it, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. Like, how do you compete with that if a huge company is thinking in that way?
Yeah, all the things that we were kind of taught to think as entrepreneurs, they figured it out right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not stupid. They kind of saw the first round of disruption, and they're like, okay, we're not going to let that happen to us. Let's own the next round of disruption, and that happens through acquisition, but it also comes through like a certain form of bullying.
It's funny because I don't know who the clients that you worked with specifically were, but I bet you they were the disruptors in the first wave in the early 2000s. And now they're like, all right, history repeats itself. Let's get ahead of the curve here.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like innovation has become like a must now.
Yeah.
And then that's essentially what we kind of what we sell through our software is kind of suiting you up with a suit of armor of innovation, helping you kind of make these decisions, and then providing the tools that the big tech companies have, except what they have is something that is what I would say requires more expertise and more resources because they're talking about managing like 20, 30 pieces of technology and combining them together to create the monster that they have.
Yeah.
Now, these smaller companies can't do that. And so we've looked into kind of simplifying that model.
Well, I think that gives us a good basis in here to what to get started, because the little of what I know about the company you're running now, which is also called after yourself, right? It's called
Yeah,
Sho.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
One of the troubles of finding a good domain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
it's a dope domain, let me say. I mean, I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it sounds like BCG was the perfect launch pad for you to get it, like to kind of incubate the idea of what you're doing now, of just like that entire
Oh,
process.
yeah,
So without talking more about that, because we'll get more into that, I want to talk a
yeah,
little bit more about how you got here. And
of course.
I've heard that, you started more in the, like, you're still in the arts and the creative side, but all of that had to come from somewhere. And I was listening to your first episode of the Brand System podcast, with shout
Yes.
out and subscribe to them. Show will plug it at the end.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Yeah, the science of brand systems.
yeah. Did you live most of your childhood in Japan, or were you raised in the States mainly?
I did until until about sixth grade. I was
Okay.
in Japan, and then so it was kind of funny, growing up. I would tell my dad like, "Hey, I don't do ABCs." Like I was, I was like, one language is enough. I'm already confused.
Yeah.
I'm trying to manage all these different things.
Was
But
was
yeah,
Japanese your first language, or
it
English?
was, yeah, it was my primary first language. Yeah,
Okay.
I would
Wow.
say that, like, having my dad be American, I was kind of mixed from the day one.
Okay.
But growing up in Japan and having Japanese friends, I went to like a Buddhist monk like preschool and stuff like that where we
Uh-huh.
didn't even wear shoes.
Culture shock over here.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you find, like, how did that experience compare to, because you came over here around 12? That's what I was listening to in the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
How was that culture shock for you? Because I can imagine. I mean, I love Japan. I've never been there myself, but
Oh,
on
you
you
have to
on you
go. Yeah.
yeah, on YouTube you'll see a bunch of vloggers who like live over there, and it's just like, it's so different but beautiful, and just very minimal. I feel like the style is like very minimal and organized, and everything is just there. So I kind of wanted to hear from you, like, how does that compare, and do you find anything from your childhood kind of still has rubbed off in inspiration, design wise or creatively, for yourself?
Oh, big time. I would say that it would hard to be, you couldn't separate me from Japan in my childhood, and
Yeah.
like what kind of drove me initially to be creative.
Mhm.
A lot of times, like, you look at Japanese movies and anime and different things like that, and you wonder, like, wow, like how did they come up with all of these kind of unique characters, scenarios, and different things like that? And then you realize you could just kind of walk around Japan and you can
Mhm.
find these individuals. There's a strong respect for the craft and the artistry, um, and then it's more of a like um, it's more of like a appreciated like discipline, like martial arts in a way, in the way you approach it.
Mhm.
So that was always really beneficial for me. I'm really good friends with a lot of amazing artists in Kyoto, like
Mhm.
ukiyo-e artists, um, printmaking, ceramics, even like beautiful old fans. Um, uh, and that has been a huge influence on me. Just seeing how they go through their day, what their morning routine is like to essentially get themselves into that creative space consistently. And it isn't like, four screens and one's got Netflix on the side and you're listening to YouTube and you always have a podcast going on or something like that. It's really like, I mean, they are doing their art and breathing and nothing else.
Yeah.
And then that focus has been kind of a key aspect of what I think has been allowing me to be a little bit successful in this field. Yeah.
So, it's interesting that you say that, because in the States, I think for most people who don't know about the arts, or are professionals in creative fields, they think the arts are more abstract, like you're kind of just throwing
Yeah,
darts at the wall. But in reality, it's a honed discipline. To be great at anything,
absolutely.
it's the same way that they would approach, studying medicine or studying law or studying something that's a more specific kind of tangible thing for an outsider.
Mhm.
And I think Japan is unique in that there are these little, because it's everything you mentioned there, the Kyoto artists that you mentioned. You
Yep.
mentioned like ceramics. You mentioned a couple of others, but those are specific almost like subcategories of a craft, right? And they're
Yes. Yes.
specifically becoming masters at that. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, like if you draw geishas, like you only
Hmm.
draw geishas, and then you use a certain medium, you only use a certain medium. They're very specific. Uh, like even the ukiyo-e artist that I mentioned, unfortunately he passed away recently, but um, he was like the last living like traditional ukiyo-e artist, like made his own pigments and different things like
Can
that.
you explain a little bit of what that is? I've never
Yeah,
heard that term before.
of course. So ukiyo-e is Japanese woodblock printing. And then essentially what you do is you create a woodblock for each color. You kind of align them like other woodblock printings, and you create these beautiful pieces, right? And you've probably seen like a lot of traditional Japanese artwork, and you're like, oh, these beautiful lines, that's you typically all carved through wood. So even like the hairlines, within a
Wow,
millimeter, they'll cut 4 times. So
that's
like
amazing.
these are lines that you can't see without like a precision camera. The funny part, the first time I met Tachihara-san, when I came back to the States, I really didn't know how famous he was, but I saw him on TV, and then they had like this high powered camera kind of like zoomed in on what he was doing, and then
Hmm.
it's just astonishing
And it's all
to
handmade.
all handmade.
Wow.
Um, Back in the day, they used to have a person that just focuses on hair, just focuses on the eyes. So you have like an eye guy, and they pass it along to the woodblock print. The next
Wow.
person does the hair. So he does all that, but you can even think like back in the day, it was even more specialized. And then you can like, it's kind of a beautiful thing that all of these artists were so in tune with each other that they were kind of working and behaving as one to create this beautiful artwork. And that's something that you rarely see.
Yeah.
A lot of artists kind of like put their own ego into their artwork these days. But
I think
uh,
I
yeah,
think we're seeing. I think we're kind of scratching the surface on something I've never realized before. Kind of Japan's like cultural roots kind of like created the niche in terms of
yeah.
like, that's pretty impressive. As being in production, I fell in love with production through collaboration. That the whole
Mm.
collaborative process, the idea of one person does this, one person does this, and all of these different moving parts come together to create this beautiful moving picture at the end that just captivates. That's what got me into what I do today. And that's exactly what you're describing when you say, remove the ego and you have somebody who's doing the eyes, somebody who's doing this, somebody's doing that. And it's beautiful to see a bunch of moving parts or a bunch of different pieces come together for one thing.
It's
So
so much more fun to play a sport with others.
yeah, yeah,
It's
seriously,
like playing
100%.
soccer by yourself. You're gonna have fun shooting that ball into the goal, but it's a beautiful thing when you can kind of appreciate those goals with others. Same thing with artwork. If you can kind of celebrate, hey, we built this beautiful piece of artwork, or we created this beautiful video, or in our case, the software that's going to help all these people. Yeah.
All right, so I want to ask you, was it over there that you first realized, okay, I like art and design, like art? Because I figured design wasn't a word yet that you were kind of,
No, no, yeah.
yeah. S-
It's interesting. I got really deep into the art world.
mhm.
I had my artwork in Carnegie Hall and different things like that. And then there was one month where I got over 20 awards in just art.
Wow.
uh, a big part of that was I had to give a shout out to Interlochen Arts Academy. It's a boarding school for arts, and they gave me a full ride to go there, and it was really nice of them. But it allowed me to essentially spend, uh, 5 to 8 hours a day on art, compared to most people my age. And that's really different. Um, the way I initially got the full ride, if anyone's interested in like you have kids or something like that, and you want to send them to school on a good path, was I read every single book on art, basically, to the point where the library didn't have anymore. And then um, I also my father would drop me off at the art museum on weekends, and then I would sit there without music or anything else, and I would just practice and learn from the masters. I would set up my oil paintings and different things like that, and then I would try to understand why they made the decisions that they did.
How old
The
were you when this, like, Interlochen, was this a middle school or high school?
Yeah, so
School?
interlocking was junior year, senior year, and
Okay.
then the 2 years prior to that, I was spending a lot of time at the museum. So 13, 14, 15, 16,
Mhm.
I was spending every single weekend, a couple hours, uh, just practicing. And the beautiful part there was, there's other artists there that were also giving me advice and different things like that. I would take workshops. Every once in a while, I get like private lessons and different things
Yeah.
to that from people that were kind of inspired from seeing my work. It was a beautiful time. Um, I it's worth noting too, just because we talked about that move when I was 12 years old and coming to the States, that maybe partially the reason why I kind of had that time was I was kind of shifted into a completely different culture. So like new friends and new
Yeah.
all these things, right? Trying to figure myself out and who I was. Um, and then that kind of manifested in art for me. Yeah.
Interesting. So then I was just about to piggyback. I was going to say, it sounds like you found out from an early age, kind of very closely after you arrived to the States, that art was your path. That you didn't know, maybe you weren't thinking about it necessarily as this is the way I'm going to make my living,
Yeah.
but this is my interest. This is where I'm spending the majority of my time. So what
Exactly.
was there, with that being said, was there an aha moment for you? Was there like a specific moment for yourself that you were so captivated by art or design, maybe, or maybe you have a more complicated word or term for it today, that you
Yeah.
just knew that this was the thing for you or where you wanted to spend your time?
Um, Well, with art, it was really my exposure to those fantastic artists and seeing that like, hey, this is beyond just kind of a fun hobby or different things like that. This is a lifestyle. And so art really kind of inspired me there. Um, Design, I, you know, a lot of people have the same story,
Mhm.
but I was inspired really early on by, the first gen iPod, Apple, Steve Jobs and his keynotes, maybe even more his keynotes than even his products. The way he kind of spoke to the product, to the benefits, there was kind of a magic to it. Uh, and essentially my mission, and still to this day, is the same mission. It's been the same for since the last 15, 16 years, is to bring beauty and clarity to the world. Um, Typically clarity first. It's hard to bring beauty into the world without, some sort of understanding of the world first. But once you have that understanding, you can bring a lot of beautiful action and beauty into the world. So that was kind of my goal. And I was doing that through art first. What I realized was the impact would potentially be significantly higher through design. So I kind of saw it as a kind of a next phase for me, as I through my artwork I was able to have people feel this way, or to think about something, or experience this moment. Uh, I wanted to even do more. I wanted I wanted to really really truly help people, and then I also really I'm kind of sensitive to like the creative mind too. So I wanted to, being a creative myself, I wanted to create a beautiful world for people like myself who just love to create,
Yeah.
and then shouldn't have to like, and it'd be great if we lived in the future where people really appreciated that craft and different things like that. So I'm kind of building towards that through design, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love your mission. That's the first time I've heard you say it like succinctly like that,
Thank you.
bringing beauty and clarity to the world. And I
Yeah.
think you're kind of bridging the gap now, because what field needs more clarity than how AI is going to come into this? And like it's coming, it's inevitable. But what
It's
does that mean?
yeah, it's really scary. Like
Yeah,
I'm you'd hope at its core that the human values are
mhm,
really put into place, and then that's
yeah,
what we kind of emphasize on here at our company. Is honestly the majority of the compass or the direction for the AI comes from the human.
yeah,
So we go through a discovery process to really, like, just like any, like you guys do as well with your production companies and with your clients. You go through a discovery process to truly understand what they're trying to accomplish, so you
yeah,
can help them get there, right? But you
mhm,
need the map to understand kind of how to do those things and kind of set the compass. So we have experts on the team, and then we also consult with a lot of experts like yourself to kind of hone in these discovery questions, and so we can form that brand DNA. Once we have that, we can supply that to the AI, and then now everything that the AI is creating is just an extension of that story.
giving
Like,
guidance, giving.
yeah, a really great way to potentially think about it is more like a translator. You've had, you give the AI your story, what you're trying to do. Now it just translates for like different target audiences that you're trying to reach, or people that you're trying to reach. It just makes it more and more relevant and tailored to them and their messaging, because
Mhm,
it just is aware of more. So the easiest example of this is like, my mission statement, if I wanted to share it with someone across the world in a different language, that'd be very difficult for me to do. However, I could do that with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We're gonna go more into that. I don't want to.
Yeah.
We're gonna go into that because
Let's
now
do it. Let's do it.
I want to
Yeah.
shift gears. Is there anybody in your family that kind of gave you an inspiration that works in anything similar to what you do?
Yeah, so my family is actually in publishing.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with newspapers these days, they're not exactly doing fantastic.
Yeah.
And then so I've been trying to help along that path as well. And I really do believe in local journalism, and I hope that you know flourishes very soon. I think it will, as that kind of content becomes more valuable. But I would say that my father definitely had a really great eye. So he had a bit of a design background, not necessarily an artist or a designer by trade, but more of, a business guy by trade, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would mention that I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have his feedback and his response. Like I created a lot of artwork. You can probably I give myself the credit for that. But in terms of understanding, what was working, what was not working, and different things like that, and making it so each session of mine was productive, I really appreciate my father for giving me that feedback through the years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I relate to that completely. My dad is my pretty much everything consigliere, if you ever watched The Godfather, but
I
he's
haven't seen The Godfather. I need to see it though.
got to top of your list.
You gotta
Okay.
watch it.
Well, he's not in a creative field. He's in the automotive industry, but just innately has like a creative eye for different things. And I can just show him a project I'm working on, and I'll know what I'm like, what do you think of this? And I'll know exactly kind of like what I'm having issues with, and he'll be like, I don't know about that. I'm like, how do you know? Like, what is this?
You need those people that will give you honest feedback without hurting your feelings.
Yeah.
Not to say he doesn't hurt my feelings sometimes, and sometimes it feels like tough love, but most of the times it's support, And then, especially with creative work, it's so common for your friends or for people to just pat you on the back and say, "Oh, you're doing amazing."
Yeah.
But that's really difficult because you walk out into the world and you think, "Oh, my work is amazing," and then you get hit really hard. You place your bets on it. You basically say, "Hey, I'm going to behave in this world like my work is amazing now."
Yeah.
So it must be something else. So it kind of throws you on the wrong path.
You have to be a harsh critic of yourself, hands down, because it is tough. It's not your friend's first inclination is not to be like, hey man, this isn't working. Like that's a tough thing to do.
It is. It's honestly like the easy answer for them, right? Because they don't want to have some sort of weird conflictual situation with you. Like, oh yeah, Sho doesn't like my artwork because
and then there's the flip side that you can't take everyone's opinion too seriously because you gotta you have to kind of qualify opinions sometimes.
It's very true.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bridge the gap here because we're talking about the creative fields, but ultimately you have built companies and you have and you're seeing the creative field from another perspective, which is that of the business owner. What was your first venture starting off as an entrepreneur? Like, what was that first venture for you in your life?
Yeah. It depends on how small the venture is. I mean, I
take us back.
I made T-shirts as early as when I was 12. To afford my first computer, screen printed them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantastic. In one weekend, I racked in like 5-6K.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. As a 12, 13-year-old, you're feeling great.
Yeah.
I created a website and stuff like that too. So it got me quickly introduced to e-commerce and stuff like that. But that was kind of like my first venture. And then I did a little bit of a wholesale deal with a importer called Arias at the time. But if we're talking about companies that still exist and stuff like that, my first one was probably Rareform back in college. So I started this company called Rareform, rareform.com, along with my partner, Alec Abedisian, and Ryan Judy. Ryan was more the cash. Alex was more the business side. Great sales guy. You kind of need one of those. I'm still looking for one too right now. But he really did teach me a whole lot. I mean, we did the whole pitch process together. we created a beautiful product. We talked about, so the product itself, for people that don't know, we repurposed billboards into bags. We started off with surfboard bags
Very
made in
cool.
California, and stuff like that. We moved into duffels and wallets and different things like that, and he's been selling those products ever since. And then he's been doing great. I left that company mostly just because I felt like my job was mostly done.
Mhm.
And then my passion was less in soft goods, but actually brand building. So now I'm building a brand building software, so I could just keep doing that for the rest of my life and helping people do that.
Love it. Love it. I wanted to mention something because when you said you went to Interlaken,
Yeah,
you were doing art 5 to 8 hours a day.
yeah,
There's a Malcolm Gladwell book I've read called
10,000 hours.
Outliers.
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of like an example of that in terms of, maybe I don't know if you hit 10,000 hours specifically, but I think it's
Yeah.
kind of like, loosely based a number. But
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah. I definitely hit 10,000 hours.
yeah. Just for clarification, he's like, I definitely hit 10,000 hours, not 9,010.
That was definitely a book I was reading at the time.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess another thing that was extremely beneficial for me at the time was I was probably consuming a book every 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Um, it mostly was the fact that I would do this trick where I would read the book, but I would also have the Audible at 3x.
I love that.
So I'm just ripping through text. So if I speak quickly, it's because I've kind of been brainwashed through the years by listening to Audible books at 3x.
I'm gonna have to try that. I've always listened to audiobooks a bit quicker, but I haven't yet paired the audiobook with the reading. I'll give it a shot.
Tricky. The 3x is really, like, 2x is probably
Hold
more
on.
reasonable.
Is this a life hack? Legitimate? Like, you read the book and you had 3x going on at the same time while you're reading?
Yeah. So I'm
Helps
just,
with retention, huh?
because you can read faster than you can really hear.
Mhm.
So the hearing just kind of supplements it. If you hear by itself, 3x is too fast. You can't do that. But for me, I can skim really quickly while I'm reading, and then I just 3x the text.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I was really into like Tim Ferriss and stuff like that back in the day. I was reading like hacks on like how to read fast and stuff. I was like a big life hacker at the time. Now, like I've gotten to the age where I realize you can't really hack life.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the time, I convinced myself I could. So I was doing everything I could. Yeah.
It is hard to go back to normal speed when you start listening to stuff at 1.5x. Like, I go on YouTube and half the videos I'm watching, I have like a 1.5,
Yeah.
1.75, because
Every podcast I listen to, same thing. It's always 1.5, 2x.
Yeah.
What can you do? It's going to train our minds to just go in hyper speed.
Sorry, go ahead, Sho.
I started doing like meditation and stuff like that, just to like do the opposite, just to balance out the.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like slowing down to reflect rather than just plowing through ahead.
Exactly. I can't do the whole beauty part without the pulling back and doing the whole reflecting and clarity aspect. That's something that I'm still working on to this day. Is oftentimes it's very easy for me to just jump into the work. It's almost like less stressful than where like the clarity requires like me asking people tough questions and stuff like that. It's always more difficult. And then so I need to spend more time in that world. Yeah, slowing down a bit.
It is like, even in the morning you wake up and it's just kind of like the first thing in your mind is all the stuff left over from the previous day. Or you're looking at your phone. Exactly. You're catching up on Discord, on on everything that's there. And it's just so hard to kind of just stop and just go for a walk. You take like a 30-minute walk and just kind of like assess everything going on.
So
or whatever.
beneficial. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I'm so extremely guilty of that. I'm a bit of a roller coaster, so to speak, where eventually, my body will fight back and be like, "Hey, Sho, you need a rest, so I'm going to put you in the hospital."
Oh yeah. So has that literally happened to you, that you've worked yourself to the point of like you have to go to the hospital for being exhaustion?
It used to happen to me a lot.
Yeah. Stress levels, or like, I don't know however comfortable you feel talking about.
Of course, no, I'd be very happy to talk about it. So the biggest circumstances that was when I was working consulting, and then essentially what would happen would be, you have partners or leadership that are setting really ridiculous expectations through the customer, and then oftentimes when it comes to like this digital stuff, the team is not prepared.
Yeah.
There were some like there was one project where I was working through like Christmas and winter break because I was assigned to a project, kind of there to kind of oversee it. And then once I got involved in the project, I realized no one on the project actually knew what they were supposed to build. It was a design system, but they were like no one taught them what a design system was, and so they essentially they wasted a ton of time, like a ridiculous amount of time. So I had to get the project back on track. But this is not. I I would be too embarrassed to present not a design system to the client.
So the burden fell on you.
The burden eventually fell on me. So while people were still, taking their breaks and enjoying their holidays and different things like that, I wasn't even initially part of the project.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was brought in and I was pushing, ridiculous all-nighters. And then that's where like I, start thinking about, I really need to get more on the leadership realm because the partners and different things like that would just keep piling on. They're like, oh, it's doing great now. Like Sho created all this work. Maybe he could do more. And then so they'll be like, hey, we have a presentation on Monday. Can you create like a product video for us over the weekend? I'll be like, I'm already doing all this. I'm putting the deck together and everything for you. There's a huge disconnect between leadership and the actual work that needed to get done. And then so because of that disconnect, I often kind of threw myself on the grenade. And then I ended up needing I would. The other part too was like I'm actually pretty good at doing that. Like I know I can take certain proteins and different things like that. I can caffeinate and different things like that to kind of keep me going. But I do push myself a little bit over the edge. Now it's been a while since I've been in the hospital for anything like this. It's been like 3 or 4 years. But there was 1 year specifically where I think I was in there like 2 to 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Just body just giving out on me. Yeah.
I can relate in certain aspects, but I don't want to take away from anything. But I think in those experiences, and I want to kind of get your take on this. When you go through a process of building something or doing something, and you're just like, this is what I love, but this is not the way to do it. And it's like this kind of like realization of like, if it's like this, I don't want to do it like this like I can't do this forever. You can kind of like cast a vision out and be like, this is not sustainable. Well,
definitely.
Were those moments times where you were like, if I run my own business, it's not going to be like this. Like it's gonna. Was that already kind of formulating in your head?
There was definitely a lot of that formulating. There was also a part of me that was just kind of like, this is my Navy SEAL like boot camp. Like this is like I need to go through the grind and different things like that. But 10 years in, you're just like, okay, like how sustainable is it? How long can I keep grinding at this level? And then so you start thinking about, a sustainable life and being able to create this work, but also enjoying your life at the same time.
I took it that way as well, in terms of if you didn't go through it, you wouldn't know how to kind of build it. You gotta go through that fire and kind of like almost drown in it in a way where you're like, not doing that again. That's not happening.
The funny part is that like I would say that after starting the company, it's still probably tougher.
Different types of a different type of responsibility.
It's a different type of responsibility. It's tougher, but it's a toughness that you kind of enjoy. Like it's not like these variables are coming out of nowhere. Like you're in control of the variables. Like if you have anyone to get mad at, it's yourself. And then so it's a different. But that being said, you can get mad at yourself and you have no one to kind of blame. You kind of have to take full responsibility for it all. And then so there's definitely kind of pros and cons to it. And in some ways, like back then, I used to think about, how amazing it would be to be in a position I am now. And then now I sometimes think about how amazing of a position it would be to be back then. And like have the expense count, have the healthcare, and like And then if I wanted to, I could, be like some of the other employees and not care as much and just kind of like enjoy life.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just not who I am.
I was gonna tell you it's
That's not
that
me.
that's great. That's great. But if it's
Yeah.
not you, it's not realistic. So
Exactly.
um,
It would never happen. Unfortunately, when I was 16, I told people that I like to choose the hard path.
mhm.
And it stayed true to this day. Just like a video game, you want the challenge. Otherwise, it's just not fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna take it back a little, to because we Interlochen and Arch Center, I know
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
after Interlochen, but, for the creative path, for the most part, like, if you wanna be a lawyer, if you wanna be a pharmacist,
Yeah.
if you wanna be a doctor, it's like, here's the path. All right, you're gonna do your 4
Yeah.
years, then you gotta get into
So
medical
easy.
school, and now all right, then you gotta do, I think, residency,
Yeah.
and then you're, like, 35, and now you can be a doctor, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's generally how it goes. Pharmacist, kinda the same thing, but
Yep.
there's a path, there's a path, and it's kinda like, if at 14 you're like, "I'm gonna be a doctor," if you do X, Y, Z, you will
Yep.
be a doctor. Okay.
Yeah. You can
For
feel good about like, oh, I'm making like steps towards my
milestones.
goal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the creative field, at least, I mean, specifically speaking, I feel like an outsider in the
Yeah.
production world. I mean, I'm not in California, film school reject. I mean, every aspect of just kind of like I've been chopping through the woods since I was like 15, just trying to
Love it.
figure out like what's the next step. And for you, it seems like you did the same thing where maybe you weren't realizing it, but every single moment or hour that you spent was, your dad dropped you off at the art museum and you were
Yeah.
kind of steeped in that world. And then Interlock, and you were 5 to 8 hours a day with art. And then I want to talk about Art Center.
Yep.
What was it like? Was Interlochen it was before Art Center, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Interlochen was before Art Center.
Mhm.
And then Art Center, fantastic school. If you guys are not familiar with it, I actually I
College,
teach.
correct? Yeah, just
Yeah,
to give a
college. Sorry, I should clarify.
Mhm.
I actually teach there on Wednesday nights a class called Future Visions. It's a way for me to kind of keep my mind a little sharp and like
Mhm.
also stay in touch with kind of like new trends and different things like that. Essentially, in the class, we go through new trends and help them come up with new innovative concepts for the future.
Mhm.
Um, w- and then Art Center for me after Interlochen was a no-brainer. Like I visited like the top 10 schools around the world. And then Art Center was actually kind of my last visit because they didn't give me the full presidential scholar ride that the other schools
Mhm.
did. The other schools like flew me out and stuff like that. It was wild. And then after visiting those schools, I was almost under the impression of, oh, I'm not going to go to college. This is not a good use of my time
Mhm.
because I was sitting in on those college courses and I was like, this is not commercially viable things that they're teaching. Um, when I went to Art Center, completely different, right? So
Mhm.
every teacher mostly has like their own practice or like people so for example, Christo was one of my teachers.
That's awesome.
Say
So
no more. Say no
yeah, yeah.
more.
I had people like Chris Doe, Doyle Young, who was like basically the last living typographic legend that we'll probably have. uh,
What was? Can you repeat his name?
Doyle Young. I was lucky enough to actually be his last class before he passed away.
Wow.
Um, but Doyle Young, you should definitely look up some of his artwork or his letter forms and logos and different things like that, like Saks Fifth Avenue. Just gorgeous, gorgeous work, and all through just like pencil and like just graphite on paper, right? But it's amazing his attention to detail, his understanding of the lines, just the craft was just at a completely different level. And then so I was extremely fortunate to go to Art Center and learn from some of the great teachers like that. There's so many over there.
Mhm.
Brad Bartlett, yeah, Tom Meredith. There's there's a lot of fantastic teachers, but they're fantastic because um, they're not sugarcoating things. They're basically they're setting expectations like they would set for themselves for their own customers. And oftentimes they're looking to potentially hire you too, so they're really testing you.
They
Like
they
at
they
our
sound more
company,
like mentors.
yeah, they're more like mentors, and then and that's where the discipline comes in, right? That's where the quality of the work comes in, because you basically get like this fatherly pressure from your teachers where you don't want to disappoint them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So it was, I mean, when I went to school there, it was very common for me and my friends not to sleep 2 days out of the week. It was just something we did.
yeah.
It was just like, no matter what, Friday nights we weren't sleeping, and Monday nights before this one class we weren't sleeping. And then it was funny. I had one friend who would do this with us, but he would sleep through his class, and we would be like, "What are you doing?"
You know,
You
it's
read the work, but you sleep through the class.
I gotta
Our
say,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to say something. Your experience at Interlochen, the 11th and 12th grade
yeah,
experience that you had, allowed you to come up with some realizations that most people don't have until they're getting to their like third year in college. You know,
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you were really in a boot camp for what Art Center was, so that you made the most of the opportunities. That's incredible.
Oh, big time. So when I got into Art Center, because I've already taken so many art classes, I tested out of like half of them. So I double majored in illustration and graphics. I did cinematography. I did photography. Um, I was really able to branch out and take
Mhm.
all the courses that I wanted to. Like, even as a second term student, I was able to take the class of Doyle Young, even though he only taught seventh term and eighth term students, because I've already tested out of all the courses.
That's amazing.
Um, I also like all the technical stuff. I already knew, and I knew better than the teachers, because I would use, I don't know if you guys remember lynda.com. It got bought by
Yes.
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah.
So Lynda actually used to be a teacher at Art Center. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And then I had access to lynda.com. And
Uh-huh.
then I would do the same thing with Lynda that I did with Audible, right? I put it at 2x and I'd follow along on my computer.
Mhm.
That did two things. One, I learned the program. And through the program, I learned about things like the baseline grid and all these different tools that basically allowed designers to do what they do. But through the tool, I was able to understand its purpose. Um, and then two, because I was watching these lynda.com videos at 2x and following along on my computer, I was operating at 2 times the speed of most people. So I got really quick, extremely fast. And then, so while I was at Art Center, I was able to still freelance. I still had, I just, my capacity for output was very high. Show super high output.
You know, I would love
Yeah,
to stay here, but let's keep moving forward.
yeah, that's good.
After Art Center, and if you listen to the first episode of the Brand Systems podcast, you'll
Yeah,
see Sho had a couple of different opportunities leaving Art Center for his first job
yes,
option, right?
yes,
Can you walk us through those, and then why you ultimately ended up choosing BCG? And then I want to take this conversation into more of our
yeah.
practical side of when you launched Sho.
Of course, of course. So that's a really tough decision, right? Because a lot of the other tech companies, or the tech, so it's either consulting or tech, right?
Yeah.
Or even like I could even have joined my own startup, Rareform, at the time, or different things like that. Um, and then like ran into the entrepreneurial route and different things. But for the tech side, um, I knew that I would be part of a really big machine. That I'm not the only smart, like I wouldn't be the only smart person at these tech companies,
Mhm.
right? So it's very likely that I'll get siloed very quickly. So it would be hard for me to develop a more of a bird's eye perspective on things and how things worked. That was kind of my understanding. Even though the smoothies and the massages and the free classes would have been fantastic, and
Mhm.
then I like the idea of like being able to live on a campus and different things like that. I really wanted to see how things worked at the executive level at the biggest companies. So that was one thing. The other thing that was also really kind of pushed me towards BCG at the time was that they were hyper aggressive. So even 6 months before I graduated and different things like that, they were coming and visiting me and offering me different things. Um, the interview process was also very different, right? With these tech companies, you typically, I don't want to name anyone specific, but with
Yeah.
these tech companies, they specifically, you're just talking to seniors or leads, like basically the people that you'd be reporting to, but um, it doesn't really give you a really good understanding what leadership's thinking, what they're doing. BCG, on the other hand, Digital Ventures, of course, I got to meet the CEO, I got to meet all the founding partners and different things like that. and they kept on like upping the ante. They basically said, whatever resources that you need to do your job, we'll give them to you.
It's
And
amazing.
to their credit, they did. They really gave me flexibility to do really almost anything that I wanted to. I was incredibly happy about how I was treated there. Uh, besides other coworkers maybe, and like a few partners that kind of pushed a little bit too hard. But I could have pushed back too. So I have nothing bad to say about BCG Digital Ventures. I
Yeah.
just kind of went a little bit extreme with it. Now it's a different world now. I would say that BCG Digital Ventures just got absorbed by BCG Digital. It's at the very beginning, it was kind of like that. They started out at a beach house.
A more like indie feel to it.
Yeah. We're flying around first class, like going to these huge parties. We're like renting out huge clubs and stuff, and then we're launching new products left and right. Like it's just the excitement's everywhere. Now, I think BCG saw BCG Digital doing all those different things, and they're like, hold up, you guys are having a little too much fun over there.
They're like, this is looking a little bit more like the social network building phase here.
Yeah. Like we've seen this play out before. Like we're gonna put the constraints on this. We were also able to charge like 10x what they were able to charge.
Wow.
So they're like, okay, we need to just absorb them into the rest of what we do. And then, but during that absorption process, they've kind of killed that initial kind of entrepreneurial energy that was there at the very beginning. But I I hope that they kind of figure that out. But that's kind of a roller coaster right now. Yeah.
Can I ask you now, seeing that the landscape has changed, if you were Sho graduating art center today, what your choice would be in today's landscape for maybe the student out there who's listening?
For today, yeah. It really depends on your skill set. Now, if you have the stomach for it, I think startups are fun. It's great. It's a really great way to get exposure and then kind of the reality check. Like, I think it's really hard to go to some of these extremely large companies that have all these our systems in place to protect you. You're just not going to experience the same amount of growing pains, so to speak. So, but there's some people that are really not about the growing pains these days. There's like an entire culture of people that are kind of anti-work, and then that they just want a paycheck. They just want just enough to get going, but they really don't want to add any additional layer of stress to their lives. So for those people, startup life's a terrible idea. So go with the big tech companies. They will cushion you and take really good care of you.
Yeah, I think that's so spot on. Like, if you have the self-awareness that you know that that's what you want, fantastic. But don't expect the other side. Like, don't expect the fruits of that come from the labor of like a successful startup that you're going to get from the more, work-life balance, job there. All right.
The first 5 years at a big company like that, you're going to impress. You're going to make someone else look good.
Yeah. Let's get into the next part here. The practical. I would love to stay there forever.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do a follow-up podcast. I think.
Yeah, man, I'd love to. I'd love to do like a futurist follow-up podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's make a routine.
Yeah. Well, let's backtrack. You started selling T-shirts. That was your first venture. Then it was Rare Form. And let's just say like your time at BCG. I mean, you had several ventures because you're there like as an incubator. Doing all the roles and seeing all of the different moving parts of how to build a successful startup. And then you formulated the idea for Sho. I want to always call it SHO.AI because the domain just feels right. But let's just say it's Sho. What led to that idea? Did you always know you were going in that direction and the direction of owning your own company? And walk us through what Sho specializes in today, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty.
Of course. So it really spanned from like feeling kind of overwhelmed from every 6 months getting a new client, right? And these would be like big companies, like the biggest car manufacturer, the biggest bank. It was always like the biggest of whatever. And then I would have to build out these extremely intricate systems for them. For this one financial institution that was one of our clients, who by the way, I found out owns 12% of the world's assets. So if you combine all the world's assets, including your own assets together, they own 12% of it. They're a bank of banks. So that was one of my customers. And then for them, we needed to create a design system But this was the trick. They wanted that design system applied to over 17,000 applications. So they have like hundreds, if not thousands of developers that develop custom applications for all their customers. Now the customers are transacting billions of dollars. So they'll like, who cares? Like build them whatever they want, right? But it poses a really difficult design challenge. How do you improve the UI and the UX and the branding of 17,000 separately developed applications? Some of these are on tables, Flash, like you name it, all over the place. It was a huge disaster. So I created this entire system, this design system, right? It's really complex. It essentially combines guidelines, assets, and like building components together. Now, what I realized after building this thing was that this is one. It's fantastic. Every company should have one, and then every tech company does, right? But they also have like a couple hundred people managing it.
Yeah.
But I also realized that like I can repurpose this for other ventures. So I started doing that, and I'm realizing that 90% of the infrastructure that I was building was repurposable. So a lot of the UI patterns and best practices and different things like that can actually be conditionalized and like tailored to any brand very, very quickly. And that 10% tailoring process, so kind of like human DNA, like brand DNA, that's those differentiating pieces. What we do here at Sho.AI is we focus on trying to find those as quick as possible. And then so we can apply that to a more robust infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to the last thing I wanted to do was start another project and start building something like this from scratch again.
From zero. Yeah.
From zero, right? And then so I was like, that is a ridiculous, like that's a waste of my time. That's a waste of the client's money. This is not the way it should be done. The way it should be done is that there should be a shared infrastructure or framework that continues to develop and evolve as the world evolves. So if a new social platform comes in, you don't have to, you generate new layouts and different things like that. It handles that. But then it is tailored to that customer using artificial intelligence. So ironically, like we are an AI company, but AI is a small part of it. It's like the implementation discovery process to customize a really robust framework that allow your business to succeed and innovate.
So you got essentially your theory or way of thinking is that 90% of brands share a lot in common.
Yes.
Now, whether we'll go into like sub industries, right?
Yeah.
But then your process comes in now. We're not going to have to redo the 90%. Every new client that comes into the door, we have the 90% formulated, and we have this robust system that we've streamlined with the help of AI. And then now your process is to kind of do that 10% discovery of, okay, what's your positioning? What's your core? What makes you as a brand? Is this
exactly?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so did you have the background to go into AI like while you were working at BCG, and were you already kind of building that system with a team of people? What was your strategy to leave BCG and to become a profitable company? Did what was that process like?
Of course. Well, I'm not like I didn't like specialize in AI in school or different things like that, right? But it's very much kind of a quickly emerging field. And then I've been coding since I was very young. And then so I generally understand, how things work. I've also like in the past, I've created like more machine learning projects where it's not like a neural network, but I was like customer support type stuff where like you would where I created a website where you ask a question and then it initiates like a video. And then we shot like 1,000 videos. And then after they finished the video, there was kind of like a follow-up. But those follow-ups was really more like a series of conditionals that were very smart than some of the more advanced things that we're doing today. Now, today, we have, so just kind of like full exposure on how we kind of use AI is we have our own kind of layer, but we also utilize other sources as well. So our biggest source is OpenAI's API. We also use IBM. We also do AWS. And we kind of serve as that, like, we'll always be on the lookout for the best thing to plug into our system. Now, the interesting thing is like, oh, like that's, that's scary. Like, well, your customers can go directly to that AI and then start generating this stuff. Well, that's where our layer comes in, is that if you go directly to that AI, you're going to get junk. Essentially, it's going to go on the internet and find the average of everything. We've trained our AI very specifically to create like quality stuff that has been kind of curated and trained by experts. So the AI fresh out of the box, those APIs out there, it's kind of like getting a child. Over the past 3 years, we trained that child on how to create beautiful brand systems through all the things that I've learned, things that some of my coworkers have learned working at Nike and Bugatti and doing amazing stuff over there too. And we've kind of added that additional layer. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Let me ask you, have you gone so far as to even subdivide that 90%? So let's say you have a system just for restaurants, you have a system just for fitness. And is that part of that system?
Absolutely. So we kind of break it up into 3 ways right now. Essentially, we have like the corporate framework, we have the agency framework, and then we also have like the startup framework. I think the corporate framework comes with over 1,000 pages of playbooks on how to execute on everything. The vendor billboards, even like how to put the logo on a plane, like everything, right? Now the startups and different things like that, much smaller. So for startups, we make sure you have all your social assets and your mission statement and different things like that as well.
Let me ask you a question, Sho, real quick, because I want to kind of like unpack what can we call it like your AI or your engine or your system?
Of course.
Are you branding them from scratch sometimes, or are you taking an already made brand and applying it to like the case of the bank that banks other banks into, because like what you mentioned earlier in the episode, a lot of times, and I'm friends with a lot of like brand strategists and whatnot. You can do brand strategy, but here's the caveat. Unless you hire that brand strategist to stay on board after for a little bit, you're now stuck with all of those assets and all of these guidelines to now apply them to all of your touch points.
Yes.
So is that what your system specializes in, applying the brand to the touch points or creating the brand itself?
So it's a little bit of both. I would say that we typically like to say that we help activate the brand. And then so like typically, we'd like to have the users that kind of have a pretty good sense of their brand, logos, typeface, and different things like that is helpful. We kind of prefer that customer, but we also have kind of a discovery process for customers that have nothing. And then so you'll find that it's actually not that dissimilar from what you would probably ask your customers. You probably go through questions. We go through 17 questions. Our questionnaire does cover more business related things, which is a little bit atypical in like a design brief. But it's because it helps us kind of generate assets and different things like that, or like campaigns or cold emails and different things. So it's important for us to have the full spectrum of, like, our system will even kick out like business models, like lean canvases and balanced score sheets and stuff like that. Really intricate stuff that investors love. But we need the data for. So you fill out those questions. It gives us the who, what, where, what, why, how. A little bit more complicated than that, but that's the general gist of it. And then we're able to execute on it. But to clarify it even further, like let's just say that you don't even have a logo. We had a customer recently where we used the AI to generate logos for them.
It's amazing.
Wow. Like for people that don't have mission statements or manifestos and different things like that. We had a girl that filled out our questionnaire in 10 minutes. And then after the 10 minutes, she had everything.
That's incredible.
So you have manifestos, you have time, you have values, you have personas, you have audience, you have business models, you have your entire style guide, you have social media assets, you have banner ads after a 10-minute questionnaire.
That's incredible. I wanna ask you, because from launch till now, when you let us know when you founded SHO.AI.
Yeah, 2018.
2018. What has growth looked like for you? Did you leave and have a client ready? Did you kind of start and have no clients? Like, what was your approach to get off the ground, to have this system in place, but to also get business through that door?
Yeah, it's really surprising that the first 2 years, a big part of it is like, oh yeah, we're like, you know, we know everything. We know everything. This is all gonna work out and everything. It's amazing kind of looking back how little I did know. uh, that being said, early on we were kind of lucky to have a few customers to
Mhm.
kind of help validate our idea. We started off really simple. We hacked WordPress CMS into a REST API, and we just generated a platform for ourselves to like start working with customers. 4 to 5 months in, we essentially validated the model, right? We're like, oh yeah, like it's this hacked up solution is serving a value and people are willing to pay for it. At the time, I think we got one customer to pay up to even $9,000 a month for it. And so we were like, okay, cool, we validated it. Now let's actually build out like the proper system. So our system that we built back then, the V1 system, is still extremely state of the art. We think it might even still be the fastest CMS on the market.
Wow.
We all JavaScript, like really beautiful interface, great stuff. And we kind of built that out. It took us now. The one thing that we made a big mistake on with the V1 software is just not selling it early enough.
Mhm.
So we built out like a customer advisory board. And then essentially, their job was to give us feedback on how to improve the product. Well, we took that as, if we don't address these issues, we shouldn't, like, going to market and selling is a waste of time.
So so it wasn't just you to start. Who else joined you in the beginning? What were their roles? What was your
Of
role?
course. Yeah, it's actually kind of a funny story. You know, Even when I was thinking about starting the company, I had a little bit of cold feet. I'm like living in Venice Beach. I got a
Yeah.
pool and different things, good
Yeah.
times. I told my boss the idea, and then he was like, you need to go with this." Like,
That's a good boss right there.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
he was like, "BCG would be very happy to like take this in and reward you handsomely for it, but if you want like." This is something that you should run with. So I got that advice from him. I also had some coworkers that I really, really respected.
Mhm.
So like the best of the best at BCG that told me that they would leave the company and join me if I did this.
That's nice.
The following day, they told me to quit their job. So,
Wow.
Follow
Wow.
through.
so
That's
the follow
amazing.
through was there. So my follow through was there as well. And then
Awesome.
so essentially, the company started with um, uh, myself, Tyler Adams. We had two devs and CTO from Tyler's more PM. We had developers from Paris. So I think it was a four-person team
Mhm.
at the very initial start. And then get this, the company actually our first office was in my grandma's garage. So I got people to move from Paris, the heart of Paris, heart of Portland, the heart of LA, making, double six figures, like stupid salaries and healthcare,
Mhm.
living the
Mhm.
life. And I convinced them to move in with my grandparents with me and, start a company in the
That's
garage.
amazing.
In the, in the middle of Missouri, of all places, if
That's-
our reputation of Missouri wasn't bad enough.
But you know what though? It is something beautiful about being in a place and building it up because I
Yeah.
mean Venice Beach is already on the map. LA is on the map.
Yeah.
But Cape Girardeau is not. It's not on the map for the. At least I didn't know. I had never heard of Cape Girardeau
Oh,
until I looked up your bio.
it's
So
far off the map, right?
yeah.
Like Cape Girardeau, for like references, like if you've seen the show Ozarks, they mentioned Cape Girardeau on the
Mhm.
first episode.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that bad. We have a college and two hospitals here and stuff like that, and we're actually like 2 hours outside of the Ozarks, but kind of have that reputation a little bit. A big part, like there's starting to be a little bit of a community growing. There has to be. There's a few government incentives that are helping with that too. And then so there is a part of me that really does hope that I can kind of help build something out here as well. So even if
Yeah.
we do build out a presence in Los Angeles and different things like that, that we build out a presence here it's important that I build out a
headquarters.
presence here as well. build out customer support teams and different things like that. So people in the area, in rural areas, have something to look forward to in the day, and to kind of inspire the community to do more. I know even we've been here for 3 years. We've already inspired a lot of startups to move out here. And then so we hope to continue to have a really positive impact on whatever community that we're involved in.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. There's definitely more opportunities in the city, in terms of sales and getting the skill sets that you need, and retention and different things like that is definitely a lot easier in the city. But as I've stated before, I'm not about the easy path.
Yeah.
And then there's something kind of beautiful to me about my having some family legacy here, and then being able to participate and help with that as well. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I kind of want to bridge the gap here now to your start in the early 2000s. You're inspired by Apple. You're inspired by the innovative products you released, like the iPhone, the iPod, reverse order. I got that wrong.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you've finally gotten to the point in your life where you've combined art and you're also the builder? You're on the cutting edge, and you're building towards a future that doesn't quite exist yet. It's not, using AI is not for somebody who doesn't know how to talk to the machine, so to speak.
Yeah.
Have you feel like you've arrived at that place now, of where you were as a kid, thinking about and being inspired by Steve Jobs up on his keynotes?
Yeah. It's funny, as a kid, when I looked up to Steve Jobs, I don't know if I necessarily looked up to him as I want to be him.
Mhm.
I kind of looked up to him as I want to work for him. In that sense, I really had humble kind of aspirations when I was younger.
Mhm.
I thought I would be a creative director at a top production company. Would be
Mhm.
really cool. I build stuff for a top production company.
Mhm.
And then so I've definitely kind of surpassed that at this point. And then you think okay, so now you've definitely arrived. You surpassed what your childhood. Partially, there might be a sense of a little something I'm still trying to figure out in my head, where I'm constantly thinking oh, this is not enough.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I also feel it's not necessarily that it's not enough, but that I'm trying to contain the excitement for kind of being on the edge of being able to see more and understand
Mhm.
more. And I think that there's still a lot of questions that I have around creativity and design and branding. And then this is a way to kind of satiate my curiosity towards those questions. I also have a lot of questions about AI and its implications and different things like that. And then how it affect not just me, but my family and the people around me. And then I'd prefer to be on the forefront of those things.
So that was great. I wanted to ask you now, kind of pushing forward now, the conversation about AI that you just
Yeah.
mentioned. Where do you see AI complementing businesses in the future? How do you see it revolutionizing the workflows? I mean, you're doing it with brand
Yeah.
designs, but where are you seeing some of the best use cases now for AI in terms of just practical use, injecting it into um, the workflow today? And you can use that as creatives or just in general. Yeah, selfishly, hey, let me know on the production side of how we can use it. But
Yeah. Well, I think you'll be surprised. In a way, uh, you know, I said I wanted to be a creative director, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to have this team of people that can kind of help me and develop different things and complement my skill sets. I see AI as really being that future. Like, in the same way that, Tony Stark had Jarvis,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then it allowed him to do all the things that he did. He wouldn't have been able to build Iron Man or build the other suits or test out these different color variations and different things like that if he was in there hand painting the suits himself. Uh, and in the same way, we see AI as kind of being this magic wand for creatives of the future, to allow them to be able to almost to see things that they couldn't see before, to visualize in a way that they've never visualized before, so they can create more beautiful artwork. Um, so I'm really excited about seeing a huge boom.
Mhm.
There is going to be no excuse in the future for having an illegible billboard ad or like an ugly menu. These things are just going to be it's going to be a much more beautiful world. I also see it where it allows people, like a lot of creatives who currently feel overwhelmed, to find the time to come up with more innovative and nuanced ideas. So I think AI is going to take care of like the more kind of redundant, repetitive tasks that we kind of already understand and establish, like building a car or something like that, and allow those same builders to really thinking about, okay, what is that next car? Um, what how can we make this more human? Um, allows us to kind of open up space to find that clarity. Um, so because of that being kind of inevitable, where people are going to have more time, I'm actually very excited about the future and what AI can bring to the table.
It's kind of funny or ironic, when you worked at BCG, that you were hired by clients to essentially disrupt their current processes, right?
Yes. Yes.
But they wanted to be the ones who owned the actual disruptor.
Yes.
To now create your own venture and kind of go to my question, do you think that AI tools like, what you're using and countless others for different purposes, do you think that is now the new disruptor of like the 90s and the early 2000s? Is this where it's going?
Oh, big time, big time. I think it's going to give a lot of people a ton of autonomy. It's going to like if you wanted to start a coffee shop right now.
You're speaking Zach's language, by the way.
Yeah,
Zach is
Zach. Okay, let's say
I want to at some point.
okay, beautiful, beautiful. Also an aspiration of mine to have like a studio and a little coffee shop on the side. So let's say you want to start a coffee shop right now. It's really, really difficult to compete against like a Starbucks or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then so like a lot what some people do is that they buy into a Starbucks franchise. And that Starbucks franchise gives them all of these assets and all these different things to basically execute on what they want to be able to do without as much like worry, so to speak. In the same way that kind of that franchise guidelines can give you that assistance, as we see like the future of AI being able to help a lot of these entrepreneurs and creatives to bring their vision into fruition. So the value comes a little bit less in how you execute and more in like what you can visualize, and then how you can visualize things in a way that isn't just relevant to you but to others, and so you can kind of build a community. People like language is going to be incredibly important. Like being able to kind of craft these prompts and different things like that. And then the other interesting thing too is that if you don't know the language, if you don't know how to talk to the AI about these certain things, it's not going to be that beneficial to you. As we're kind of facing right now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, I mean, it does in a way. I mean, I've already started tinkering around with like AI copywriting, art generation, like with Midjourney and DALL-E.
DALL-E's fantastic.
What do you think of those? Let's go there and then we'll take it to the rapid fire. And
of course,
I had other questions about like pain points in business, but maybe you can get to that at the end of the episode.
Oh, I'd be very happy to talk about. There's so many. That might even be a podcast in itself. Like pain points of like creative work and businesses. Sorry, what was the first question?
The question essentially, what are some of the best tools? Maybe we can actually make a resource for people after the episode. Like, what are some of the best tools to kind of get their feet wet in AI and stuff like that?
So I really like the Midjourney community for people that want to just get started. The reason why I like it is because on their Discord channel, they have prompts and they have like philosophy, and they have like basically like a level of training. You can also see what other people do as examples, and kind of like it feels more like a fun game that you can kind of experiment in. If you like an artist studio, so to speak. And then Midjourney is actually, I would say, better than DALL-E in terms of creating aesthetically beautiful things. So they've created another layer where they train their data set on higher quality art material. is my understanding, as my belief. I don't know. I'm making assumptions here. DALL-E, on the other hand, they train their data on 90% of the internet, is my understanding.
Mm.
So
So
if you ask for a picture of a beautiful drawing of a dinosaur, Midjourney is going to find pictures of that artists have created. So their database is probably from like DeviantArt or like old art, digital art collections and different things like that.
mhm.
Whereas DALL-E might be closer to the output that you get out of Google Images.
So
Now, yeah,
with that being said,
yeah,
is Midjourney is the AI engine itself creating an original piece? Is it taking pieces that already exist? I mean, well, the way I imagine
yeah,
it is it's a funnel, and it's pouring in thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of different
yeah,
images that fit the criteria of the prompt that you wrote,
yes.
and then kind of blending that into this vision, so to speak.
It, exactly. So it basically it stemmed off this idea. If you guys are really familiar with like when you Google image search like a dog, it
Yeah.
finds all the pictures of a dog. So they created an AI classifier that looks for similar pixel matching and patterns. Like,
Mhm.
oh, this is a dog. Now, what they did with DALL-E and Midjourney last year was they reversed it. They were like, hey, if we give the text to the AI, it can find us the images, right?
Mhm.
But instead of just finding us the images that match the pattern, use the pattern itself to generate new images. So in many ways, it's actually behaving similarly to I said that weird, to a human.
Yeah.
uh, so like a human, as you go through life, you see a lot of dogs, and then you start to get this vague idea of what a dog is. So if I asked you to draw a dog right now, you try to correlate some images. And then just as original as your artwork is, the AI is original too. It's doing the
Mhm.
same thing. It's not necessarily stealing the picture itself. It's saying, oh, I remember a dog has a tail.
This
Yeah.
may be a silly question, but let's say today's the first day of Midjourney. I'm the first person
Yeah.
that asked you for a picture of a dog. Now we fast forward 2 years. There's been 2.5 million people have asked for a picture of a dog.
Yeah.
Does Midjourney get better through repetition, or like is that going to
Yeah.
be better 2.5 million users later, or is it all about what you type in the prompt? Like time doesn't make it better, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's a really, really good question. I think most of the development in terms of improvements
Mhm.
come with like new parameters. So like every release that they give out. So like let's say that like last week, something's big in the news, and then everyone's making pictures of cats on Midjourney. This week, it's not going to create better pictures of cats, really.
Yeah.
Um, Now they are doing a few interesting things to provide like responses. So within Midjourney, you can ask to upscale, or you can ask to get like a variation of a piece. So those are different ways of kind of validating a piece, right? Like you only want to upscale it if you liked it,
Yeah.
or like in DALL-E, you can like save or push. So essentially, one thing that you are teaching the AI in that circumstance is you're saying, hey, when I answered this math question, I gave this answer, it was correct. So next time someone asks me a question like this, I'm gonna give them more stuff like this. So the answer to the question is a little complicated. It's both.
Yeah.
Um, Most of the intelligence really comes from the version releases. So like DALL-E 1 versus DALL-E 2,
Probably two. Yeah.
Mm.
you saw like like DALL-E 1 looked like someone took a picture with your old cell phone or something. Like when you first got like those flip phones and they're just
Yeah.
trash images. And then DALL-E 2 is actually quite compelling. Now, these progressions, expect them to accelerate. So within the next 2 to 3 months, you're going to see a huge update. Within the next six after about 6 months, it's going to be a like mass news. Like people are actually going to start freaking out about it because it's going to start producing things like movies and stuff like that. And then
Wow.
It's coming.
yeah, in about a year or two, I would say if you see some sort of creative work online, it's going to be like 50% chance that it might be AI. It's going to be that prevalent. It's going to flood the market. People don't realize like in a year, as soon as corporations kind of finish
Embrace
what
it.
they're setting up right now,
Mhm.
they're gonna flood the market. And then when you think like, oh, I'm not getting ROI on my Facebook ads right now, good luck in a year. But I say good luck by say, yeah, just go onto our website, sign up, and we'll help you out.
Of course.
Well, that kind of, this is going to be the last question before we get into
Yeah.
the rapid fire. You do a lot at SHO.AI, right? So
We do too much probably.
how many people would be in your, just rough estimate, how many people would you need on your team if your engine didn't exist? If you were just a brand agency,
Of course.
how many people
Yeah.
would you need as compared to how many people you need now in terms of filling those roles in different, the 90% you said, that those are people
Oh
who
yeah,
are
yeah.
doing that manually,
It's kind
right?
of funny that entire circle that you see there, that's
Mhm.
kind of like all the different people that you kind of need on your team to serve all the jobs that we do.
Hmm.
And then so that becomes like it's basically our entire startup there.
Wow. Yeah.
So like you're gonna have to get really good devs. You're gonna have to get really good system engineer, designer, brand guy, and you're gonna have to focus them on something that is not your core product or service. You know,
Yeah.
VW, they don't create tires; they get Michelin tires.
Mhm.
Like Amazon, they don't like. I think they're investing in Rivian, but they're not like necessarily focused on building the trucks. A
Mhm.
lot of these companies that we work with, right? They should be, if they have any skill set. If you have a designer on payroll that's costing you $175,000, don't have them working on business cards.
Mhm.
Like, don't have them like pixel pushing style guides and presentations. Don't have developers generating CSS for fonts and stuff like that. Have our system handle that stuff so that that same developer can work on like cool functionality. That same developer can work on like our designer can work on, oh, like what does our next product release look like? You know, how do we innovate beyond AI? Um, yeah.
And with these tools, would you say a smaller company can compete with the big boy
Yeah.
companies there?
So we're actually like that's kind of one of our special sauces. Is like and whenever a company says, "Hey, like we're looking to raise funds and hyper growth and stuff like that," we're like, "Beautiful, perfect," because we'll make you look like $1 million.
All right.
We'll make you
That's
look much bigger
amazing.
than you are, right?
That's
Uh,
amazing.
it's really beneficial. We even have bigger companies that launch like smaller sub brands,
Mhm.
but they'll be able to launch 3 over the weekend and test them all. And when I say like one creative director can launch 3 brands with 3 websites, 3 social campaigns, mission statements, audience segments, taglines before he gets on his plane
That's crazy
while
powerful.
just chilling in the airport,
Yeah.
it's a different world. And
It's a
then
game
so like
changer.
yeah, and this guy specifically like he had like a presentation for a client or something like that, and then the person putting together a presentation didn't get done in time, so they decided to just generate 3 brands for their client using our system. And then they ran a bunch of analytics on it, and then they showed it to the client. The client was so happy from that, that airport work that the guy
Mhm.
did last second that ended up giving them multiple like 7-figure deal is wild.
It's amazing.
Um,
It's coming to disrupt. I think that's the key. It's coming to disrupt, and it's a
yeah,
matter of there's a lot of business models that are going to be uh outdated within a year to 2 years, it sounds like, in terms of, and not in a scary way. I mean, if you can see it, if you can
yeah,
plan for it, you can get ahead of the curve and you can be with it. But if
yeah.
no, I find it more exciting than I do the opposite, because it frees up people to really be paid for their minds and to strategize on things that they're not getting bogged down with on the 90% rather than that really core 10%.
Yeah, it's a beautiful future. And then frankly for, younger entrepreneurs and creatives like ourselves, like it's a way to get some of the resources from the previous generations
Yeah, I mean,
to unlock a little capital so that we can do some cool stuff ourselves,
I mean, I think
Uh,
of things through the prism of what as a storyteller, of what I'm trying to accomplish. But there's a million moving parts in production. So
yes. Yeah.
how does AI revolutionize that in the coming year? I mean, and how to be
Yeah.
ahead of the curve and using that? Because I was thinking about this yesterday. It's not going to be far before you have a complete animated movie generated
Absolutely.
completely with Midjourney art.
Yeah.
Whether you are putting in all of your core characters, the world, the world building within Midjourney.
Yep.
I mean, your next animated adventure movie is going to be completely built on on an
Oh,
AI art
yeah.
generative tool. It's awesome. It's
And
really
then
cool.
you could potentially be the main character. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
imagine if like one of your favorite movies, like a superhero or something like that, and
Let's
the
just say
AI
like
can just pop
let's
you
just
in
say
there.
like Harry Potter. Let's just put
Yeah.
like
Yeah, like
let's
Harry
put that
Potter.
in there.
You can be Harry, and the AI will call you by your name,
Mhm.
right? You can really be embedded in the entire situation. If your family's in the movie theater, like it can scan people in the audience and put them in the movie for fun and
Amazing.
giggles. Like the amount of tailored and relevant entertainment that's going to come through AI is unbelievable. Like a lot of people say, like, "Oh, AIs can't be creative." Well, one, like if you've already seen Midjourney and stuff like that, and you still think that, I challenge you to come up with better art in 24 hours.
Then it does in 30
This
seconds.
does in a
Yeah.
second, right? And then using the same prompt. So, like,
Mhm.
imagine if someone gave you a prompt like some of the prompts that Midjourney gets, and then you
Go.
would be
Just
like,
go.
"That's ridiculous." Like, there's no like, I can't create a piece from that
Yeah.
silly sentence you gave me.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, Midjourney is like, "Here's this beautiful thing."
Yeah.
And you're completely right with video and stuff like that. There's a really great video on YouTube you should check out where they use kind of like AI generated music video.
Mhm.
Um, and then, so what they're doing there, they're kind of cheating the system. They're creating a bunch of imagery, I think, and uh, they're using another AI to kind of animate it and different things like that. Um, but it gives you a little bit of taste of like some of the things that it's capable of doing. So, for example, I have a lot of experience in motion. So, like After Effects, Cinema 4D, I do all the renderings for our website and different things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and then I worked on Avengers back like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I guess now.
Now just drop that in as like as a humble brag at the end of the episode. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, talk
Avengers.
about branding, right? Like Disney, even back then, we were planning 12, 15 movies ahead of time. So when we launched Avengers, we already knew about the movies coming out today.
Wow. Well, I read Bob Iger's biography,
Oh,
and really
so
good
good.
of his
Yeah.
journey as CEO at Disney. And yeah, they've had these phases, they call them, of movies. They had it through at the time of that he wrote that. I think they said 2035 or something like that. Now it's got to be like 2060. Who
Now,
knows?
yeah, they are thinking light years ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember even this. So this was back in like 2009, 2010 era. We already were looking at like Black Panther assets and stuff like that. Yeah,
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right.
yeah. Infinity Game was already planned out and stuff like that too. Sorry, I
Yeah.
completely backtracked on the question. What was it?
I think we were just talking about just getting ahead of the curve, and Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, just
Yeah.
of trying to, if you're a company, like how to make sure your business model is AI proof in terms of like that you're using this tool to help you rather and to
Yes.
compete with
Yeah.
larger companies, because that's the thing, is that you can, as a smaller, more flexible or fluid agency, you can compete with the big boys now if they're not moving. If they're doing a BCG digital ventures type of thing, then good luck.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're not, good luck to them. And I think more will be disrupted than not, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because history just has a tendency of repeating itself. But
Yeah, I highly suggest everyone start like dabbling into it. There's also like easier access to things like I think like Copy AI or Jasper, Jasper.ai and different things
mhm,
like that. From our tests, the quality of the output and the responses aren't as good as like going directly to OpenAI. I think it's
mhm,
because OpenAI has 4 tiers of AI specifically. Basically, they're like, hey, you pay more, we will run more parameters. So the more parameters you run, the smarter it is.
Mm.
Um, Now, since I just mentioned that, it is worth mentioning that or not DALL-E 3, or like the next version of GPT-3, GPT-4, the
mhm.
general language processing stuff, is supposed to have 500 times the parameters of GPT-3.
Sheesh.
Um, GPT-3 was launched like I think two years ago or something like that. They've been working on GPT-4 for a while. I think that they're just trying to learn how to control it. But Um, and then it's just too dangerous to release. But because of from some more pressure from Google DeepMind or other competitive services, they're going to have to release it if they want
Mhm.
to um, they're going to release it over the next coming months, and that's going to
Wow.
have huge implications.
And that's a different AI
Yes,
engine.
yes,
Wow.
yeah. Different AI, and so like even today, I would argue that a lot of the copy that it produces under our guidelines, like through our system, is already better than myself. Not that that's like a big deal. I'm a second language English speaker and stuff like that.
Well,
but but like if you keep in mind like the amount of education that I've already received, to produce another designer or business thinker like myself would be expensive. But the AI is already surpassing me, I believe. And then next year it'll I don't know how I'll be utilizing it, but you can pretty much guarantee that any kind of copy that I produce or I'll be talking to an AI about. Yeah.
Wow.
Anything that I say, I'll probably be discussing with an AI about before first. Even when it
really?
comes to like my workouts are planned that way. Last year I actually used the AI as like a therapist, basically.
You plan explain it? Can you, because that's that's foreign to anybody
Yeah.
who's hearing that.
Oh yeah, like
How do you design a workout? How do you get, how do you have a therapist type conversation? That's kind of like borderline like the movie Her a little bit, where you're,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for sure. So you can actually log into our system and then you can talk to an AI version of our brand, or an AI version of any brand that creates a system with us.
Mhm.
So you can ask it for things like, hey, I need a cold email to launch our product for Thanksgiving for this audience. And it'll just boop. You'd be like, hey, I need a blog. Or in my case, I could be like, hey, you know, this is some information about me. This is who I am. You can also read this information on this website here. Um, here, like, just start talking to it like a therapist. So like, you couldn't ask the same question. Like, even with a therapist or a designer or anything like that, anybody that's trying to help you, they're gonna have to know about you.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
make sure that you give them that information. But funny enough, like if you go through our brand discovery process for an individual, it's it's
Very
just as effective.
It's very
Uh,
similar to, I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of overlaps with the business brand discovery,
Yeah, we actually see a huge future where like we think that it's not going to be businesses like five years from now. Most of our customers are going to just be single people, like influencers or freelancers or teachers. People are just trying to find out what their mission is, trying to kind of consolidate their lives, trying to get things together, and trying to manage their digital ID, so to speak, their digital identity, and making sure that's
social.
consistent.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of social content, a lot of social capital that they're
yeah.
building in terms of that. You think that's why guys like Gary Vee or even Chris Do, I mean, the future is very much revolved around because Chris is there,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yeah.
Gary Vee, if you're familiar with like Web3 and NFTs and
Of
that kind
course.
of
We
stuff,
we actually are building an NFT generator right now.
really, you'll see some VFriend stuff up there. I'm not like big on VFriends necessarily, but I love it. I like what he's supporting and all that kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
thing. I think he probably, maybe, do you think he sees that the 5 to 10 years from now it's going to be about the person behind the business more so than the business itself?
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. Just especially the speed of things are progressing, like you kind of
Mhm.
need like a captain.
Yeah.
So Chris Do and Gary Vee are really smart about how they're approaching it right now,
Mhm.
right? Um, to be frank with you, that's partially what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah.
Is to kind of build out a little bit of a personal brand to kind of help support.
Hopefully this
Because
podcast helps with that. We'll get you
yeah,
some
thank you
stuff.
guys,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll build our brands together. That'd be great.
And we're doing this. I mean, it's the same thing
Same
as
thing, exactly.
we're as
Yeah.
brand
Yeah.
builders ourselves. It's, you have to create that. But sorry, I was interrupting you there. So
No,
please
no, no, no,
continue.
not at all, not at all. I completely agree. Like we all have to get there, and so,
Yeah.
and in many ways, like content generation and the stuff that we're doing right now is like the future of advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
100%.
like advertisements are going to slowly start dissipating a little bit more as blockchain makes it easier for like micropayments and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, like the quality of execution is going to be good across the board. So people are going to be more curious about like building relationships and stuff like that. And people,
So that's interesting you bring that up, because I'm the guy here who's the Web3. I've been in crypto since 2017, and just kind
all
of like
right,
learning
still
about it.
holding.
And yeah, still holding. Yeah, I'm a
Good, good, good.
diamond hands, man.
Mhm.
Made diamonds. That's it.
I haven't looked back in. I haven't looked at my wallets in 2, 3
Don't do it.
years,
Just don't
just
do it. I
because
just
every time I do, I take money out.
Ah.
Well, I'm always talking to Zach, and
Yeah.
Soapbox is both a network and a publishing platform, and we've
Mm,
talked about ideas of like how can we integrate, revolutionize, the way somebody owns their content. I definitely love to talk
mm.
to you offline about your
Yeah.
NFT generator, what you got going on there, because that's interesting stuff. But
We also have kind of a publishing platform within our system that we're
mhm,
developing for content creation, because we
mhm,
noticed that like the future, like right now we generate like social assets and stuff like that for companies, right? But the
mhm.
future is that they're gonna do more kind of like premium content stuff, whether it be through like um kind of like the Netflix Hulu subscription model,
Yeah,
right? Or even
yeah.
like newspaper model. All
Mhm,
these people, even Linda, Christo even kind of has like his knowledge base, right?
mhm.
Um, so we're developing that. Obviously, we're using AI to generate like the summaries with the pages and the SEO and taking all that other stuff. So you just worry about the content. But we are playing around with this idea of like, does every published piece of content gets its own, like, do we put that on Web3? And how do we do that and different things like that? So we're playing
Yeah.
around with that. We're currently talking to Origin. I don't know if you guys
Okay.
are familiar with those
The
guys. Yeah.
the gaming, are they
No,
related to gaming at all?
no. They're like a blockchain asset management
Okay, yeah.
Got it.
company. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting stuff, man. All right,
We're we're
okay.
we're considering partnering with
We
them.
we could go a long time here talking about this.
Yeah. We
I'd
could go
love,
deep into
yeah.
Web3 world for
We'll
sure.
talk more
Yeah.
offline and maybe do a part two futurist themed pod here of kind of casting a vision towards the future. But let's get into our last section here. We're over, but this conversation has been
Yeah, let's keep it going.
fantastic.
Yeah, I love it.
And
I got time. I got time.
perfect. Well, the last bit of the segment, we're seeing how this plays,
Yeah.
is more of a rapid fire. And yeah, I'm a movie buff, so one of my favorite shows growing up, and I've done acting and all that jazz. But one of my favorite shows,
Oh,
and still
you're an
today,
actor. I didn't know that.
I don't do it. I'm not active as an actor. I just
Yeah.
have in the past. But
Cool. Yeah.
one of my favorite shows growing up was Inside the Actor Studio.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there, as an homage to James Lipton, who was the interviewer of each one of those episodes, he
Yeah.
would end each show with talking to the actor to give him a 10-question rapid fire
Cool.
little quiz. So I've taken his questions, and then I've kind of made some of them more my own for the purposes of this podcast.
Yeah.
So you're on the hot seat. Here we go, Sho.
Cool. You're gonna ask me my favorite curse word?
You know what? I'm gonna add that in as like 11. If you feel, I left it off because I don't know if everyone is comfortable with cursing. So I was
That's
like,
fine. I'm fine. Sorry, mom.
we'll add it in at the end. We'll add last one.
Okay.
What's your favorite word?
Breathe.
Breathe. Your least favorite word?
It's a tricky one. Can't?
I like that. What gets you going? Inspires, motivates.
S- Um, Seeing people I love do amazing things.
What puts you off?
A fear of the unknown.
What sound or noise do you love?
A silence.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Frustration.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Artist. Just pure artist. Painter.
What profession would you not like to do?
Politics.
What is a bit of advice or wisdom you wish you knew before starting your own company?
Fall in love with failing every day.
What do you want your obituary to say about you?
what a beautiful performance art or performance.
I love it. I love it. And what's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
I think that's up mine too.
Gotta be.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah, it's
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time, Sho. It
yeah.
was a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Mario and
It
Zach.
was a
It was
pleasure.
an absolute pleasure. Yeah,
We'd
it was fantastic meeting you guys. I'm looking forward to the next one.
It's awesome
Yeah,
having you in here.
we'd definitely love to have you again in the future. You are always holding the spot as our official guest. So I think what we should do? We should mint out episodes like little badges of who is the guest. And the first one will always be Sho. I don't know how many
Love it.
episodes, but
Let's
we'll
do
do
it.
it.
Love it. Love it.
We got to get
I'm
you a
in.
plaque, but we'll put it on the blockchain so it's forever.
Yeah.
All right, the floor is yours. Take a moment now, plug anything of yours, any content you're putting out, your social channels. We'll put it all in the show notes, and your website, just anything that you want people to know
cool.
about to keep up to date with you.
Yeah. So, of course, you can please check out SHO.AI. We are AI-enabled brand creation and management platform, but we really help you innovate as a company. If you're interested in what we're talking about, how you can utilize AI for branding and different things like that, I highly suggest you kind of follow us on LinkedIn. You can also check out our kind of new podcast called the Science of Brand Systems. Hopefully, I'll have Mario and Zach on there soon on YouTube and Spotify. So, and thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email is very simple, sho@sho.ai, and I'd be happy to hear from you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sho. I'm going to reach out offline. I want to know more about this NFT stuff you got going on.
Let's do it.
It's exciting.
And look into Upstream if you get a chance.
Upstream. Okay.
I actually know the founder or one of the founders of Upstream. They're trying to be like the Web3 LinkedIn, and they're creating DAOs on there for different organizations. So interesting stuff. That's just a little thing off the thing. Thank you so much, Sho, for being here. I can't wait to launch this. We're actually it'll be coming soon. So we'll keep talking about that offline.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on the first podcast, guys.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you all for tuning in. Zach, I don't know if you have any of an outro ready, but do you want to plug any way for people to get a hold of us at the end here?
I do not, but we do have a website. You can visit the website at soapbox.house. There is a bunch of other podcasts on the network there. You'll find links to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, mostly anywhere that you do find podcasts. We do have some social media accounts, so we will link out to that in the description below.
Perfect. Thank you all for listening. Sho, once again, thank you. This is episode 1 of the Soapbox Business Show. Get to work.